to a new video, friends. I'm so glad you're here. My name is Katie and I'm a Canadian artist and illustrator, and I've been running my small art and stationery shop called Fun Gal Studio since 2021, and I've been doing markets since 2022. In my years of experience with markets and craft fairs, I have learned a ton and I have tons of tips I want to share with you. I've broken this video down into 3 general parts. So first we're going to talk about materials, everything you'll need from a table to display pieces to general items you'll need to be successful. Then we'll talk about pricing and how to maximize your sales, especially if you're a visual artist and you make art-based goods like I do. And finally, I will leave you with my general tips for staying sane and organized during your market prep and your long and busy market days. The first thing I want to emphasize is that if you're first starting out, give yourself permission to have a super simple table setup. It can be so easy to get financially and emotionally overwhelmed because of course the better your table setup looks, generally that leads to better sales. But I think that the wisest thing to do is to just spend as little as possible to get yourself started, and then once you get into it and you've done a few markets and you make sure it's for you, then you can slowly invest in more items. A good rule of thumb that has worked really well for me is for each market that I do, I pick one thing to upgrade or invest in, and then over time my booth has been able to evolve without breaking the bank all at once. So a very important consideration for markets is your table. In my experience, most events offer either 4-foot, 6-foot, or 8-foot table spaces, or a 10 by 10 foot booth space, which you can fill either with tables or other display items. Of course, the bigger the space you have to fill, the more display items you need, so it's definitely easier to start out small, maybe a 4-foot or 6-foot table if you're first starting out. Another thing to keep an eye out for is a lot of events will actually provide a table. Sometimes it's an extra charge, sometimes it's not, but if you don't own one yet, that's a really good route to go. Or for me, sometimes I actually will just pay the extra table fee because depending on where the event is, sometimes it's not worth it to tote one of my own tables. It's sometimes worth it to just pay a little bit of extra money to have them provide one for you. One kind of related thing that I really want to make sure I mention is make sure you double check that they provide chairs, because you are definitely going to need one. Market days are long and spending the whole day standing is brutal. You're also really going to need a tablecloth or tablecloths plural, depending on if you're doing a whole booth and you have multiple tables. It's a really great branding opportunity if there's a specific color that is really connected to your brand that you want to get in a tablecloth. Or what I like to do is just get really neutral tablecloths that just have like white and cream, because my art products are a really wide variety of colors and it's really hard to find something that doesn't clash. So I just go with really neutral, but there's lots of options for what you can do, but a tablecloth is really, really important. If you're going to be doing lots of outdoor events, you can get those ones that stretch and hold tightly around the table. I personally don't have those and I haven't had an issue with regular tablecloths. When it comes to display materials, there are tons of options out there for what you can get, but there are 2 main things that I think are super important to consider. The first is height. We really like to see things that are at different staggering heights. It's just really pleasing to our eye. It's much easier to shop from. And the other thing is accessibility and grabability. So what I mean is it needs to be really easy for people to pick stuff up without feeling like they're messing up your booth, because if people feel like they're messing up your booth by rifling through your items, even though you don't mind, it's going to deter most people from actually looking at stuff. I'm going to quickly go over everything that I use in case that the types of items that I use would be applicable to what you're selling. So for my greeting cards, I've purchased a wire rotating stand. I really, really love this. It really helps with the grabability of the cards. The one downside of it is sometimes cards kind of like slide out the side because it's not the perfect size for horizontally oriented cards, but overall, I really, really love it and I would definitely recommend using one of these. Before that, I actually used a tiered jewelry display stand for my cards, which worked fine and is a little bit cheaper if that seems like the route you want to go. One of my ride or die display items that I've used for all kinds of things, but lately I mostly just use them for my art prints, are bamboo dish racks. You can find these all over the place. The ones that I have right now are from IKEA, but they really help with the grabability of items, separating things so people don't have to rifle through like a whole basket full of prints or whatever. Pegboards are another really useful display item. I've got a couple for my table. One I use for my vinyl stickers, and that one is from IKEA. And then I've got another one that I use for bookmarks that came from Amazon. You can also find a variety of acrylic risers that are really good for bringing up height on your table. I have one that's actually technically a nail polish holder that I've used for stickers in the past. So those can be a really good option depending on what the shape of your stickers are. I ended up going with a pegboard because my stickers are a different variety of shapes so they don't sit like on a flat riser. But I also have acrylic risers that are meant for like brochures and things like that I use for displaying my sticker sheets and postcards. Some other honorable mentions of display items, grid walls are really helpful if you have any kind of visual art you want to display. I first started out by using these like interlocking grids that are actually meant for making like temporary shelving that you can find on Amazon or probably really anywhere. And they work really nicely for just making a small little grid to put on your table. But I have since invested in some 2-foot by 6-foot grid walls from Uline that are really sturdy, work really well in a booth space setup. They're kind of hard to use when I only have a table space setup because typically you only are given enough space for your table and your chairs and that's it. You don't have extra room behind you unless you pay for like an upgraded bigger space or something like that. Some events offer stuff like that. But if you're an artist, I definitely recommend something that will show people what it looks like to have your art up on a wall in some form, because that's ultimately what people are going to be doing with it. I find that my sales of my prints are always higher when I have my prints displayed on a grid wall. I've bought a bunch of frames that I put kind of like samples of my frames onto the grid wall, and that always really helps with sales because people go like, oh, I want to see that in my house, just like that. I also have these little gold prop-up stands. I think they're just called like card stands, but I'll make sure that there's a link below, and I use these all the time just for kind of miscellaneous things that I want to have displayed, or if I have like a special holiday card or something that I want featured. They're really useful to have on hand for markets. I also use an assortment of ceramic bowls and plates because I have items like pins that are good to put into those, and they can also be good for like business cards and really all kinds of things. And then finally, one thing that I could not do my display without are wooden crates of all kinds of different sizes, because that's what I use to help me get more height with my items. One of my favorite things to do with this big wooden crate that I have is I put it at the back of the table facing me, and then it's used for height in front of me on the table to lift something up so people can see it at like eye level. But also underneath the back of that crate, that's where I keep my card reader and my extra bags and all that kind of stuff, so it's hidden, but it's really easy and accessible for me, and it offers height on the table at the same time. So other materials that are very important to have if you're doing a market. Number one, business cards. Even if you're very new and you don't have a website yet, you really want to make sure you're getting your name out to people in some shape or form, because if people really love what you do, they'll find you and then they'll be able to continue to follow you. This is a little bit of a tangent, but I would recommend starting an email list as early as possible in your art business career, because that is something that regardless of what direction social media goes and where you focus your energies with that, having an email list is like an evergreen form of communication with your supporters. And I really wish that I had gotten my email list going and started promoting it earlier, so I definitely recommend doing that. You're also going to want to make sure you have price tags. You don't want prices to be something that people have to spend time being unsure about, because that is often just a quick deterrent to not buying something. I know so many times I've been shopping and picked something up and there's been no price on it, so I just immediately put it down. So I like to have, when I first started out, I had like one of those lettered display boards that showed my prices. Over time, I started doing little individual price boards that just go right beside the items, because the closer and easier it is to read, the better. I think actually the best thing to do is, wherever possible, put individual price tag stickers on things, because that's super easy for people to check. But as long as prices are clear and easy to read, that's what's most important. I also use my price tags as kind of another opportunity to have some like brand cohesion. I've made my little price tags with the green checkerboard pattern that has become kind of a consistent theme within my brand, so my price tags match that as well. You also might want to consider something like a brand banner. So I've had a few different versions of this over the years. At first I made like a little bunting banner with my brand name on it, but I recently invested in like a big vinyl roll-up banner that I typically hang between my grid walls or on the front of my table, and that's a really nice way to kind of up your level of professionalism and make it really easy for people to see who you are and what your brand is. Regarding payments, if you can, as early as possible, try and get some kind of card reader. I use the Shopify reader because my online website is run through Shopify, so it was easy to get one of those, but I know that there's lots of other options out there like little square readers. It makes it so much easier for people to purchase from you. And you're also going to want to have a cash float, even if you do also provide cards. Some people just like to pay in cash. It's very important to have a cash float to give change. I would recommend probably having $75 give or take. The more the better, of course, but coins can be really heavy to carry. Don't forget to bring enough water for the day. If you don't have anyone with you at your booth, you might be stuck there all day. Your day is already busy enough as it is. You don't want to be dehydrated. And bring lots of snacks, very like easily munchable food, things like hummus and crackers or veggies, and like a wrap or a sandwich for lunch, because on a busy market day, you're kind of just sneaking bites here and there when you have time. And even when you're not, I find you're kind of in engaged on mode all day, so it's really hard to eat something that takes more effort, and you're probably not going to be able to heat anything up. Putting a price on your own creations just always has and always will be a hard thing, but there's a couple of rules of thumb I would suggest that make it a little bit easier. So first of all, the best way to pick how to set a price for something is to go to other markets with similar vendors to you, look at places like Etsy, and just take a bunch of ideas from other people who sell similar items to you. What I did was just took an average of what I saw for the types of items that I'm making. But if setting that price doesn't feel right, honestly, at the end of the day, what matters the most is that you feel like you're being paid fairly for your work, so follow your gut. I also think, I just want to put this out there, that it's totally acceptable to set your prices really low when you're first starting out, just to find out what are people interested, what will people want to buy from me when price is not really an issue. I'm also going to put on screen here what my current pricing is for all of my items, in case you have items that are similar and you want to use it as a guideline. I also want to mention that a lot of my items are $6, which I really like because it allows me to offer like a 3 for $15 deal at my table, which I find works really, really well. At the end of the day, go with your gut, what you feel is right for prices. If you end up losing some sales because people weren't willing to pay your prices, that isn't the right audience for your artwork anyways. And if at the end of the day you get a lot of people saying like, oh, I'm interested, but this price is too high, then that's just a learning experience for you. You can set it a little bit lower next time if that's feasible for you. Here are my prep and sanity tips, because markets are long, stressful days, and all the prep leading up can be really, really overwhelming. My number one tip is make yourself a checklist. You can reuse it every market. I have the same one. I built it in Notion. Every time I go to a market, I just refer back to the same checklist. It's nice that it's the same one because I know that last time the market was fine when I had all of this stuff, so I don't have to stress about having missed anything on the list. And I just, during the week leading up, if I know there's something specific this market needs, I make sure it gets on the list. If you don't know what to put on your checklist because you haven't really done a lot of markets before, I highly recommend doing like a mock table setup at home. Use your kitchen table, use your like resin table or whatever you're using at the market. Even just put it on the floors. Lay things out so you know what your table's gonna look like, and make a checklist based off of everything you have set up there, and then you know you have everything you need. Something that's really challenging is knowing how much stock to bring. Honestly, in general, my rule of thumb would be to just bring as much as possible because it's better to have too much than not enough. But of course, depending on what kind of items you have, that can be more challenging. I have a lot of paper goods, so it's easy to bring a lot of them, but if you have things that are bigger and bulkier, try to consider on a really, really busy day, what is the most possible you would sell of an item, and try and bring that much if you can. Here is my guideline that I use that is based on the most of a particular item I've sold on a really busy market day. But also remember, it's not the end of the world if you sell out of something. That's just a sign that that's something that people love and you've learned that for next time. I also thought I'd mention here the things that I've invested in that I use to transport my items to and from markets, because that can be one of the biggest challenges in a market day. Last year I decided to get one of those utility wagons that fold up and I can just store it under my table during the market, but it has been a lifesaver when it comes to bringing my stuff to and from my car. Cannot recommend one of these enough if you know that markets are for you and you're going to be doing a lot of them. If you have paper goods, I highly recommend from craft stores like Michael's, you can get plastic 12 by 12 containers that lock open and close, and they're a really great way to help transport paper goods while keeping them flat. Another thing to keep in mind is that if you get your goods manufactured and mailed to you, the boxes that things are getting mailed to you in are sometimes a really good thing to keep for transporting those items. So for example, when I get my stickers from Jukebox, they send them in these really nice sturdy boxes that are a good size for a batch of stickers, so I often keep those and use those for transporting my stickers to and from the markets. And lastly, I have a bunch of those big plastic tote bins that end up transporting the rest of my display items. I want to leave you with some words of wisdom and encouragement that have really helped me over the years. First of all, it is so important to embrace that growth is meant to be slow. It's so easy to compare ourselves to people who seem to have become successes overnight, but something that I heard once and I remind myself of all the time is that a tree that sprouts up overnight has no roots. If you want to build a career that has a really strong foundation, you have to do it slowly, step by step, and in essence, create your root system that is going to support you as you grow. And that can be a slow and arduous process, and it's going to take a lot of mistakes and failures and hard days. And it's all just part of the process, and it's what makes hitting those goals and having those successful markets so much more worthwhile, because you've been through all of the challenges that it took to get there. If you're starting out, just remember your first few markets are probably not going to be hugely successful. Maybe they will be, but they probably won't be. And that's okay and normal, and that's how it's supposed to be. The best thing I did for myself was decide early on that things that could be perceived as failures, I instead decided to see as learning opportunities. When something didn't go as planned, instead of dwelling in it, I tried really hard to look at it and take from that what I could do better next time. I found that having that mindset towards growing in our business and finding success at markets has made all the difference over the years. It's also so important to stay open-minded. So often things aren't going to go the way you plan, and if you can keep your mind open and just embrace things flexibly, it's so much easier to be successful. We've reached the end of the video, my friends. I just talked at you for so long, so now I would love to hear from you. If you've done markets before, what were your biggest successes? What were the horror stories? What is the stupidest thing a customer's ever said to you? If you're just starting out, let us know too, because we'd love to throw some encouragement at you in the comments. If you liked this video, don't forget to subscribe. I put out 2 to 3 videos a month, usually one tutorial style video like this and a couple of art studio vlogs. If you want to be the first to know when I have a new video, make sure you hit the notification bell as well, and don't forget to hit the like button. It really helps me and this channel grow. I also just want to say a huge thank you and give a big squishy hug to my patrons. I couldn't do what I do without you, and I am so grateful. If you want to check out what's going on over there, I've got all kinds of things like digital downloads, bonus video content, a monthly podcast. You can either sign up as a paid member, or if that's not feasible for you, you can join for free. I do share a lot of free content on there as well. Recently, I made some little happy flower icons that you can use for your desktop folders if you sign up for any of the paid tiers. Thank you so much for being part of this community. Your time, attention, and kindness mean the world to me, my friends. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see you next time. Bye!